Welcome back to episode 2 of In My Humble Potato Opinion. Um, Today, again, we're talking about anime, specifically why Knights and Magic might be one of my new favorite things ever. Um, I'm almost long silence. Lol. I'm gonna start with the start of the show, and I'm gonna warn you right now. If for some reason you are one of those people who honestly believes at this point that any show that involves the transported to another world via death or some other means trope is immediately makes the whole show bad, then get off my channel. Otherwise, if you're a sensible human being and can comprehend things, um, the it Knights and Magic does have that trope. Um, However, it's less of like focal point of the show than it is like all it serves to do is explain why this 12-year-old borderline trap is obsessed with robots. Because what happens is in the very first episode, um, this guy he's like it has this super short introduction phase where literally all this character is built up to be is that he's like some washed up programmer who's like god tier genius programmer man, but he's also obsessed with like mecha models. So he's like half of his apartment they say is full of models that he built, and what ends up happening is on his way home from a late night of overtime work, and he stops at the model store right before it closes to pick up the latest model, and on his walk home he just gets straight up hit by a car. And that's it, and then he has like there's like a quick few funeral scenes that, and then has him monologuing in remorse about all of the robot models he didn't get to build, and yeah, like that, and that's it. That's all you know about him. Is literally nothing. He doesn't even have a name, I don't think. Not that I remember. It doesn't matter. And so, and then like it's not even like he's just transported or he's or anything. Like it cuts to this scene of this old man and his daughter, and they're apparently nobles and whatever, and his daughter and the old man's grandson, the the daughter's son, and he's just this little silver haired kid, and they're in a carriage, and the kid's sleeping, and it's yada blada yada, and then the carriage gets attacked by some giant bug demon, and it's like, oh no, they're all going to die, little boy. But then you find out that in this high fantasy world, and it is very much so a high fantasy world, like just it's kind of basic in its like scope and breadth, but otherwise the world itself is basic. It's just high fantasy, but instead of like conventional soldiers because of this giant demon threat, um, they basically build mechs that look like knights, and they're really cool. And it's one of the few occasions you see good CGI used in like current animes. And so one of the squad of knights shows up. Technically, it's his dad, or the silver-haired boys. Or his name's Ernesty, and like Ernest, but with an I on the end. Ernesty, like a chevalier instead of chevalier. It's just a chevalier. Um. Anyway, he hasn't said a word. You haven't even seen his face because he's been sleeping. Um. But he almost gets killed by the demon bug. But then the knights show up. They're called silhouette knights, which is kind of neato. They're basically just giant mech knights, and they fight the bug and they kill it, and he watches the whole thing, and you find out that for some reason, like I don't even apparently whoever Ernesty, they call him Ernie later, whoever he was as a little kid before this, as a 6-year old, is just completely replaced with the guy who died. And so he's like super interested in the knights all of a sudden. And it's like it's almost like a joke because it's so weird because you know that it's like a full-grown man in a 6-year old's body, and then but he's like he totally plays it off because he's a genius, and you're like, what even is this? It's really good. And so and so he devotes his life to to basically build like the perfect silhouette knight. And so he goes to the silhouette runner school and everything, and he starts upgrading all the ones they have, and it does something because it's also it's at its core it's a mecha anime. Like there's no getting around it. That's just what it is. But it does something that like you don't see, like you see a little bit of it, but you don't see that much in mecha anime. Is that you see the development of the mechas, like from their early stages to like the final, like the most powerful finished form. Because I remember in Gundam Double Zero, which is the only Gundam so far I've fully watched all of. I want to watch Iron Blooded Orphans, but it's not on Crunchyroll, so I'm sad. Um, but it's because you go from like you see like the old like the original Gundam that inspires I forgot his name, Setsuna FSA. It inspires him. You see the original one, and then you see all like the double zero and the 01 and the 02 and the 03 and whatnot. And they all have their own unique quirks and abilities. And then you go from the you go from the Exia to the double O Exia, and then the double O Exia Riser, or however it is the Exia. Like the double zero Riser is like one of my favorite Gundams now because it's literally like gorgeous. It's almost as good as the F90. Because I got a bunch of Gundam models from my dad once, and so I have a bunch of them that I don't recognize. Anyway, but they look cool, so I keep them. Anyway, but in Knights and Magic, because it specifically mentions um, that like he's the first, he's made more advancements to the silhouette knight technology than anyone else has for like 300 years, and like all of his ideas are completely revolutionary, although they make total sense to us as modern people. And then like the contrast it creates though is that like um because it's like it's knights and oldie plate mail swords and shields and magical wands, but they're all being used by mechs, and so it's like creates this funky contrast that I really like because it's like mechs and high fantasy, two things I thoroughly enjoy. um but back to the what I was talking about. I ramble like a freaking monkey. um but it's the development because he starts off with the like their base model, like the current, like the trainee model it's the old model that they use at the school, at the training school that he's at, is the Saldatoa. Or is it the it's the Saladrea. The Saladrea, it's this kind of old junky thing, and they've been like updating them a little bit and customizing them for like the third year of high school students or whatever. So like the four of them have their own custom ones. And then you find out that like the army uses the oh, I forgot what it's like the Taladrea or Talatea or something. I don't know. But and it's cool because like they're two separate models, and you notice that the newer model is stronger. Um, Shut up, Yarl Wolfric. Anyway, because and then it goes from the new like the government. Well, actually, I think he takes one of the original Saladreos and upgrades it to the Trandorcus, and like it's different, and it's like it actually goes over like some of the problems they're having is like the new muscle tissue driving force servos he creates like are too strong for the frames, and so they have to reinforce the frames, but then there's an energy issue, and so they have to find a way to put more fuel on it without making it look dumb. And it's an interesting thing because like I'm into weapons development as one of my personal hobbies. Yeah, Imperial bastards. Anyway, um, And it goes through like all the weapons development and like how he adds 2 extra like small arms. Yeah, Thelmore having a business here. Anyway, yeah, get out of here. Um, but I'm getting distracted by this politics. Um, but like I'm a weapons development guy myself. Like while I don't do it, I just like reading about it and learning about it. So it was an interesting thing to watch, and like there's like I felt like it's nice. And then they go from the Trandorcus to I don't remember. But then like later he develops like centaur versions, and then like the final forms of them he creates, and like there's all these funny parts where like he's asking the king for supplies, and the king's like, "Can you give me a good reason?" And he's like, "It's my hobby," and it's great. All like every character is great. Like the whole everything about it is actually just really great. Um, like the combat and stuff. Like he actually wrecks one of the old models while fighting the biggest class of demon monster that there is because he pushes it too hard. And so he's like, "Well, this will never do. I need a better mech." And so he goes out and just makes it. And then he ends up with like his finished form mech, the Ikaruga. I don't know, Ikaraga. However you want. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not Japanese. And it's one of my favorite mechs now of all time. Like legitimately. Like it's up there with Jehuti, and I guess BT7274 is technically a mech, but not on the scale that you would think of him as. So it's like the Ikaraga is up there, at least aesthetically. Plus, its like combat abilities are redonkulous because it can fly, and everyone's just like, "What?" And then there's like a big war arc towards the end where basically him and his squad of centaurs and juggernauts and double sorter guys and his flying one basically win an entire war on their own. Um, but and then it just keeps going to like an even another one where at the end it's just like there's this other engineer in the enemy army who's like almost as smart, but he has like a completely different worldview, and so like they clash, and so he builds a giant dragon battleship. And then you find out that Ernie's entire motive for destroying the dragon battleship towards the end is that he doesn't want battleships to replace mechs in that world. And so he's like, if I can prove that my mech is better than his battleship, then everyone will want to keep using mechs. Because he's obsessed with mechs, and it's just like, yes. I'm dying. Well, Markarth, that's the Wyvern one. I don't want to give him Winterhold. Nobody cares about Riften. The Thieves Guild controls Riften. Anyway, just Knights and Magic, in my humble potato opinion, is like, because I watched it in 2 days. Sounds like everyone's happy. But it's just one of those things. Like the action sequences are gorgeous. Markarth isn't that important. Shut up. But I liked it a lot because it has like a lot of topics I enjoy, and it goes into depth with them and stuff, and it does it does an interesting thing with its magic, because magic is definitely present, is that it does what I'd have done. What I do with magic is that like it only loosely goes over how you actually do the magic. Like it never sits you down for half an episode and explains exactly how the magic works. It's just kind of, it's like realistically mentioned. It's like, oh, the enemy has this new magic generator, and this is like how they did it. And I'm like, okay, so that makes sense why they're talking about it. Now I know more about it because I've been paying attention to it. Like the magic just kind of happens because they know how to do it, and they never yell out like, "I'm using this spell." Well, I guess he names it. He doesn't. He kind of does towards some parts, but most of the time he doesn't. Like, it's it's a given that they're gonna yell it out to make it more cool, but most of it, like for basic attacks and stuff, he does it. And it's all pretty intuitive seeming, is why I like it. Although it is slightly different from the magic I use for it. But hey, that's me. Because I don't like wand only magic or catalyst only magic, as he puts it. It's cool because everyone uses clunky wands, and he replaces them with like gun wands that are like actually really neato. And everything, like it was just cool. It was cool. The villains were pretty boring though, we'll admit. They ranged from just like, although it is nice that the villains didn't have some huge specific thing. Like the one guy was just kind of crazy and wanted more land, and like the one lady you find out had some crazy thing for revenge. That like she never just outright mentions it or anything. She's never like, I must do this for revenge. But like then like some politician like mentions like I can restate your family, and she's like, what? And it's cool because every like nothing is super heavy handed. Who's to say? Shush you, because there's nothing heavy-handed about it. It either just casually glosses over the stuff because it knows that it's not as important as what it wants to get to, or it manages to realistically mention how it all works together and stuff, and like it's I don't know. I just it was good. It was really good. Plus, like the quality of all the animation was gorgeous. The CGI was like almost. It was at some points like you didn't even notice it was CGI. And like for all of except one scene, I think every mech in the whole show. Um, there's only one scene I can think of in the whole show where the mechs aren't CGI'd, and it's not. It never actually. Oh dear. Negotiations are breaking down. But what was I saying? I forgot. Oh dear. Anyway, Knights of Magic, it's good. If you like mechs and you like engineering and you like borderline almost traps, then you'd like it. Yeah, I was talking about the CGI. The CGI is unnoticeable. Like if anything, it actually makes it better for some of it because although like walk cycles and stuff do kind of look a little clunky with the designs occasionally, and combat's a bit derpy. But actually, even then, because it's by far probably actually the like thinking it's probably the best CGI in an anime basically since forever. It's like it's good. It's good. If you're like me, then you'll love it because I loved it. Yeah. Anyway, that's episode 2 of In My Humble Potato Opinion. I basically just sang the praises of freaking one show for who knows how long. I just really liked it, and I think like because it's a little bit underrated. Like people have like mentioned it or whatever, but it's kind of gone by the wayside. But if you like mechs, if you're a Gundam fan, then you'll probably like it. If you're just an engineering in general fan, you'll probably like it. If you like traps and are gay like that, then you'll like the main character. And he's I won't say he's like he's not full trap status. Like he's almost there, but he's not quite an um actual trap. At least not in my opinion anyway. But yeah, anyway, okay, I'm gonna just end it here before I do something even stupider.